Welcome everyone to this meeting at Entrepreneurship and Personal Development Club. My name is Nara and I'm the Network and Outreach Officer for Entrepreneurship and Personal Development Club. At this club, we're interested in learning more about entrepreneurship, meeting other like-minded individuals, and helping promote innovation and creativity. We hope that this club will be mind-blowing to you and will help you with your future and your future network as well. So every Friday we have different speakers here. So for everybody that's new, welcome. And if you want to join us other Fridays, you're also welcome to do so. For this Friday, we're having a really special guest. His name is Kyle Kumasaka. Welcome, Kyle. And before we get started, Kyle is going to give us a presentation about leadership. And before we get started, I have an introduction for Kyle. So I'm going to read the introduction. Okay, so Kyle was born and raised in Seattle. He went to Rainier View Elementary School and graduated from Rainier Beach High School in South Seattle. In high school, Kyle experienced a life-transforming event which he did not recognize at that time. A substitute teacher in one of his classes mentioned that he had held several different jobs in his lifetime. Kyle thought that that statement was interesting, but it did not resonate with that statement at that time. After high school, Kyle graduated from University of Washington with a Bachelor's of Arts in English and Asian American Studies. After college, he had a career in restaurants. At the peak of his restaurant career, while Kyle was the Executive Vice President Chief Operating Officer of Sea Galley Restaurants, a Western United States restaurant chain. At 40 years old, Kyle was laid off from the Boston Market restaurant chain. He went back to college at Boise State University to get his Master's of Science degree in Information Systems. While going to college, he worked as a pizza delivery driver. With his new master's degree in hand, Kyle went to work for a semiconductor company and worked on engineering projects like capacitance sensing, the technology behind how your phone senses your finger touch. As a senior engineer, Kyle traveled internationally to open offshore engineering offices. Kyle would eventually offshore his own job. After his engineering career, Kyle entered data and analytics consulting. Most of his consulting work is centered around helping companies migrate their people, processes, technology, and data to cloud computing. Projects have been focused on sales and marketing, research and development, supply and data analytics, and visualizations. He has consulted companies like Microsoft, Providence, Primera, and GlaxoSmithKline. Currently, Kyle is a solution director at Unify Consulting. His current client is a Fortune 500 company. It's my pleasure to welcome Kyle Kumasaka. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Nada. Thank you so much. And hello, Entrepreneurship and Personal Development Club members. It really is my pleasure to be here with all of you today, and I thank you very much for inviting me. While listening to Nada read my introduction, you're probably wondering why Kyle would want to share his struggles and his career lowlights along with his accomplishments, and that's good. That's good. And I'll fit all this together throughout my presentation. There are three key takeaways I would like you to capture from this presentation. The first is that I've had many different jobs, and so that ties into what that substitute teacher had said to me many, many years ago. My career's had its lowlights and its highlights. And I've been rewarded by working with many different people in many different locations in many different industries. My agenda is to share three of my life's principles. Having principles and North Star help you get through those lowlights. So hopefully I'll share some lessons towards the end of this presentation that'll tie everything together. Now, it's not important you share my principles, my life principles, but you should have some life principles of your own that you aspire to, because those will represent your North Star. So it's not as important about if you lose your job or you're a pizza delivery driver when you're 40, but to focus on that North Star, because that'll center you, your life, and your family. So here are 3 of my principles, and you can already guess. My first one is to have a North Star. The second for me is to drive high perceived value, and we'll walk through an exercise about how you can drive high perceived value. And the third is to communicate effectively and efficiently. And we'll walk through a little presentation on communication as well. So number 1, having a North Star for your life means always looking forward, thinking long term. Again, I was delivering pizza at 40, which some people might say was a downfall. But with my North Star about getting my master's degree, I was always focused on the long term. And that'll always help you to endure through those tough times if you have that North Star. Delivering pizza, as humbling as it was a way for me to put money and food on the table for my family. Having a North Star will always be that source of hope. It'll always give you the confidence and strength to work through difficult times and through your career struggles. Can you guess what my North Star is? Here's a quiz. Can you guess what my North Star was? So I kind of mentioned it before. My North Star was to have different jobs and to meet different people. I wanted to meet different people from different cultures and different societies, because that's interesting to me. And again, like I mentioned, the North Star that you have in your life may change, but it's important to have that North Star to help you have direction and help you have hope. Okay, number 2 is to drive high perceived value. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you. So we cannot see your presentation. I'm not sure if you were supposed to share one.
No, I'll share that. I'll share my presentation in just a moment.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Number 2 is to drive high perceived value. And driving high perceived value means that if you drive high perceived value with the people around you, they're going to want to engage with you. So in your case, this entrepreneurial, if you can drive high perceived value of how people spend time with you, they will want to spend time with you. It's not just transactional in nature, though. It has to be a relationship. So once you drive high perceived value, people will want to create a relationship with you. And when you have relationships, then you can build the synergies with each other to drive success in partnership, in relationships, and collaboration, etc. And then if you have that engaging presence, when you walk into the room, people will smile. They will look forward to engaging with you. They will be happy to be in your presence. And I'm going to walk you through a short exercise, like I mentioned, about how to drive that high perceived value. And then the third is to communicate effectively and efficiently. Obviously, you want to be a good communicator, yet great communication also includes critically selecting your words and being cognizant of time, making sure that you're respectful of people's time and you give them a great return of investment on that time. And if you're engaging and they want to spend time with you and you're cognizant of their time, then they will always feel that it's worthwhile to spend time with you. And then again, we'll walk through another exercise around communication. Are there any questions before we get started? Okay. Once again, it's my pleasure to be here. And hopefully these little exercises will be worth your while. Okay, let's see here. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see a beautiful sunset?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, can you see a slide that says lessons in leadership driving high perceived value?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. So this is in a previous career, I hosted these short lessons in leadership to help train my staff members or folks that worked in my organization to develop managerial skills. And this is one of the very first lessons that I would present. Okay, high perceived value, driving high perceived value. So the business majors that are the business majors in this presentation, can you tell me what this equation means? Okay, it means equity equals assets minus debt. So equity would be like the value of your home is equal to, or your net worth of the home is equal to the value minus your mortgage. There's an example of EQ equals A minus D. How about this next one? P equals R minus E. Any other business folks out there that can answer that one?
Profit equals revenue minus expense.
Very good. Profit equals revenue minus expenses. Very good. Okay, how about this one? This is a, maybe there's some psych majors in the group that might know this one.
Value equals benefit minus cost.
Very good. Value equals benefit minus cost. Okay, how about this one?
Okay, now I need some help, guys. Come on, tune in.
What's the title of the slide?
Perceived value equals perceived benefit minus perceived cost.
Exactly. So value equals, so the first three are very quantitative. You can measure them. There's a number that you can associate with those. The fourth one is a little bit more ambiguous. It's perception. The perception of value equals the perception of benefit minus the perception of cost. So in this case, if we can control the perception of benefit, we can increase perceived value. Or if we can control and decrease the perceived costs, we can still increase value because we've decreased the perception of costs. Okay, so the next question is, how do we perceive? So this is definitely a psych question. How do we perceive? Or biology?
Through our senses.
Through our senses. So you learn it through seeing, smelling, touching, hearing, tasting. Is there one more sense? Some people might say the sixth sense, the extrasensory perception, intuition. So now we know that if we can control or influence these senses of the people that we interact with, we can influence their perceptions. And now we have a formula to influence their perceptions to drive high perceived value. So we all remember what the value statement was. Perceived value is equal to perceived benefit minus perceived costs. So here are some examples. Okay, so when you go into business and you have a client, if you can make your client smile, that physically releases endorphins. Their body releases endorphins, hormones in their body that make them feel good. And if every time you see that person, your client, and you can make them smile, and it releases endorphins, then they will have positive vibes associated with you, positive feelings associated with you. If you share compliments, you can share compliments with your friends, and it makes your friends feel good. Releases endorphins. That's why they have positive feelings associated with you. Well, working with a client is also similar. You can say that you like a painting in their office, or they have a nice shirt, or the way that maybe they have a nice new desk or nice new computer, right? Sincere compliments can also stimulate those endorphins. And then freeing up time. So I mentioned being cognizant and optimizing people's time. That gives them more time back to do the things that are important to them. It's respectful of their time, so that there's a high value proposition of how you respect their time. And then this has a little bit more for consulting. As a consultant, I want to make sure I do all the heavy lifting in my projects for my clients, so that I give time back to my client to just review my work, not necessarily do my work. Okay, that's the end of the first lesson. Are there any questions? Oh, I'm sorry, one more. High deliverable quality reduces the rework time. Okay, here's the next one. So now, this one is called situational awareness. Okay, so situational awareness. So we talked a little bit about perceived value and how people perceive value and how you can increase the perception of your value. Situational awareness is being aware of the situation that you're in. Okay, so I want you to close your eyes and I want you to listen to my little story. So your rent is due and you're short $100 and you're a little worried about how you're going to pay your rent. So you're walking down the street and you find $100 and you go, wow, I found $100. I can now go pay my rent. So it's the few days after the month, you've paid your rent and you're walking down the street and you find another $100 and you go, wow, I found another $100. Now I can go and buy some food, some nice takeout food, or I can buy a new pair of shoes or a new outfit. But your rent is paid and you find another $100, you can go spend it. So when you find that $100, is the $100 more valuable before you paid your rent or after you paid your rent?
Before.
Before, because if you didn't pay your rent, you'd be kicked out, right? But is the $100 really worth more money? It is not. It's situational. So the perception of the $100 is more valuable before you paid your rent because you needed the money to pay your rent. It's the same $100 when you found it after the first of the month, same monetary value, $100. So here is an example of how perceived value is situational. And as a result, high perceived value is situational, right? Just like you mentioned, before it was worth more because I had to pay my rent. Situations are time bound. So in our case, it was before the first of the month and after the first of the month. And then the environment and time both influence the perceived value. In this simple example, it was I had to pay the rent and then I had already paid my rent. So leveraging situational awareness to drive high perceived value is now one of the little hints that you have. A working example of this would be your client says, I need a certain deliverable, or I need a certain product that I need you to help me make a product that I can sell so that I can make money. And there is a certain situation that has occurred recently that has changed the perception of value of products. Can anyone tell me what that is? There is an event that occurred that has changed situational awareness, driving a different perceived value for everyone in the world. Can anyone tell me what that is?
COVID.
COVID. COVID is an event. We are now meeting online because of COVID. If we were not in a COVID situation, we would be meeting in person. Hence, companies like Zoom have seen leaps and bounds of valuation of their stock, of their value. So as you go out into the business world, be aware of that situational awareness, both locally within your own proximity with the clients and partners and vendors and your peers that you relate with, but also look at it holistically. Look at the large picture, the global picture, or the regional picture. What are the types of situations or environmental influences that you can that influence you and your surroundings, but also that you can take advantage to influence, right? To drive high perceived value. Okay, that's the end of this little lesson. Are there any questions? Okay. Okay, so this is kind of a quiet group. This next one, I'm going to expect you to be quite engaged because there's a lot of questions on this one. Okay, the third little presentation I mentioned is on communication. So communication obviously is very important in business. Effective communication, optimized communication is very important in business. So at the root of communication, you have to understand what the physiology of communication is. So quickly, how do humans communicate?
With words, but also gesture. Like, it's really important to have gestures while you communicate.
Okay, correct. With words, how do you communicate through words?
You use mouth. Use mouth.
You use your mouth, and then how do you communicate that word to me?
Oh, you use microphone.
Okay, use a microphone. Okay, so it goes back to those senses, right? So Nada says you use gestures. That's how you see things. You use words. That's how you hear things. So once again, we're going back to those senses. Okay, so here's communication defined. We have a sender and we have a receiver. Okay, so the sender has an idea. What's the first thing he has to do for that to communicate that idea?
He has to brainstorm it in his head.
Okay, and then what does he have to do?
Think how to communicate the idea by not being confusing and putting kind of a little speech together.
Okay, so we might call that you have to encode it. And I'm fortunate because I only speak English, and probably a lot of you have a different language that you can understand. But for this presentation, I am encoding this message into English, and I'm fortunate that all of you can understand English. So after I've encoded my message into English, what's the next thing I need to do?
Say your message?
I have to say it. So I have to transmit it, exactly. I have to speak it. So after I speak it, what has to happen? Someone had said it has to go into the microphone, right? Okay, so it has to go through the microphone, and it has to, it's an analog signal, right? It's not digital. Well, it's digital, I guess, over the mic, but basically it's analog signal. And it has to travel through air. And then what has to happen?
The receiver listens to the
The
message.
receiver listens, okay? So they have to receive the message. So they receive the message in their ear. Then what has to happen?
Decode.
You have to decode the message. Very good. So the message is decoded, and then what has to happen?
They understand the idea?
They understand the idea. You guys are doing great. She understands the idea. Okay, so that's the flow of that idea, communication in one direction, right? Where can communication break down?
In any part of that process.
Could break down any part of that process. Absolutely right. So if my idea is a bad idea and I try to put it into words, the receiver might say, that doesn't make sense. Or if there's maybe my microphone is bad, and when I speak into a microphone, it comes out all garbled, and you can't understand what I'm saying. Well, then that would be a breakdown in communication. So to ensure that the message goes across to the receiver and is well understood, what does she have to provide? Okay, so I forgot to mention something. There's also what you consider noise, and noise is what interferes with that signal. It could be your internet bandwidth, your Wi-Fi bandwidth. It could be noise in the background. It could be, again, a mic that doesn't work well. But in order for the sender to make sure that the receiver understood the message correctly, she needs to provide feedback. And she needs to say, I heard your idea, and this is what I heard your idea to mean. And when she repeats it back, the sender will then know if the idea was comprehended. So this is a pretty simple exercise. But as you get into situations where you're trying to solve a complex problem, or you're trying to develop a multi-step process, it's important that you have effective communication and feedback so that you don't have to redo your work and you can ship that product out the door as quick as possible. Okay, are there any questions so far? Okay. So I'd like someone to volunteer to tell me to read that sentence.
I can do it.
Great, thank you.
I didn't say he drove the Ferrari yesterday.
Okay, what does that sentence mean?
That the person did not communicate that the other person drove Ferrari yesterday.
Okay, very good, thank you. So, was that Dima?
Yeah.
Okay, Dima, this is what you said, is you said, I didn't say he drove the Ferrari yesterday, which meant I didn't say it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I say, I didn't say he drove the Ferrari yesterday, I wrote it, right? That is the same sentence, but has a different meaning. Or if I didn't say he drove the Ferrari yesterday, again, I wrote it or I showed it, right? Same sentence, different meaning. Or I didn't say he drove the Ferrari yesterday. I said I didn't say she drove the Ferrari yesterday. I didn't say he drove the Ferrari yesterday. I didn't say he parked it. I didn't say he drove the Ferrari yesterday. It was a Porsche. I didn't say he drove the Ferrari yesterday. It was the day before. So in English, as you all know, where you inflect, and probably for this, all of the languages, all the other languages, where you inflect the word, it has a very different meaning. So we just talked about the breakdown in communication. When you write an email and the sentence that you write in the email is open to multiple interpretations, multiple meanings, send another email or write another sentence that clarifies your first sentence. And that'll prevent a lot of different ambiguity or confusion. The other thing is that English is very subtle. You can read that sentence and you might not understand the meaning unless you have that second sentence to clarify. So in that sense, the English is subtle, and I'm sure you're all very aware of this. It's also where sarcasm exists. So when people might say something with a sarcastic tone, but their intent is completely different than what they're saying and the words that they're saying. So I think I talked about inflection. I talked about state of follow-up statement to ensure clarity. So that's the end of that little presentation. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
So you talked about sarcasm, and you talked before in your first presentation on how to make your client laugh, because your client is going to remember about you if you make the client smile, make the client laugh. So how do you integrate, when you talk to a client, either sarcasm or a phrase to make the client smile in a professional manner?
It's a very good question. So I'll give you a couple examples. Years ago, there was a client who had the reputation of being very tough, very hard on consultants. And consultants were reluctant to work with her because she was so demanding, and her attention to detail was so precise that if your deliverable was not pristine, then she would criticize you. So I said, I'm happy to work with this client. So the first time I met her, I went into her office, and her office had everything positioned in a certain way. So you could tell that she was very precise. She had paintings on the wall. They were all very precise. She had all her pencils were lined up. Her papers were lined up. There was nothing cluttered on her desk. So what I inferred from that was that she may have had a military background. And as a result, her thinking is very black and white. The second thing I observed was that she had a picture, a recreated picture of 4 generals from the Civil War. And my client was a Black woman. So obviously the Civil War was a battle over slavery. So she had this photo of these 4 Union generals that were obviously the victor. She also decorated her room in a lot of different blue shades. So the first thing I said is, name is Kumasaka. It's nice to meet you. I said, that is a fascinating picture you have up on your wall. And then she went on for the next 10 minutes to tell me about this picture on the wall. So when she starts to talk about something that she's excited about or enthusiastic about, right, that's going to make her feel good. So in that sense, her endorphins are releasing because she's telling me about something that she's passionate about. And the first thing I said was, that's a nice painting on the wall. So I complimented it, right? As I worked with her, when I built in my presentations, I used a lot of blue. So I didn't use a lot of red-based colors or green-based colors. I used a lot of blue and different blue shades and aqua. So naturally, the presentations would resonate with her because she liked blue. So if she likes blue and the presentations I create with her are blue, then there's going to be good feelings that are associated with looking at the presentations that I created with her. Thirdly, I checked, double checked, and triple checked every aspect of anything I showed her so that she could not find anything critical about the formatting or the presentation of my work. And she liked blue. So of the things that she could criticize my work for, it could only be for content. And so if the only reason she could criticize my work was based on content, then our conversation to correct that deliverable would be very short. Is the content correct? Is it presented logically? And if that's all I have to do, then I'd always give time back to her. Now, if my presentation was sloppy, we'd have to go through everything in what created the sloppiness and correct it. If it was the wrong color, we would have to go through color selection on everything that I presented. Because I already filtered out potential conflict or points of contention, I was able to give time back to her. And obviously being in the military, right, she would value being on time and getting that time back. So that's a couple different strategies on being perceptive of what drives passion in your client's life, and then using that to your advantage. Now, you don't share that with them. You don't tell them that, but it's just your secret weapon to help drive value by being very perceptive. That's a great question.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for answering my question. It's actually really interesting. I never thought about that. So we actually have another question in the chat, but if you have another presentation, we can go on with the presentation and answer this question afterwards. It's up to you.
No, I have no other presentations. I'll answer the question.
Okay, perfect. So everyone, if you want to ask any question, also feel free to type the question in the chat or unmute yourself. For now, we have one more question. So how would you communicate wise approach someone who you don't get along with on a team?
Wow, that's a great question too. Thank you, Kay. So as you know, there are different personality types. And there are many different methodologies out there to qualify and quantify these different personality types. Myers-Briggs is one that's quite famous, but I think that you can break it down mostly into people that are extroverts and people that are introverts. And then another axis would be people that are more creative versus people that are very factual. So now you have an axis, two axes, if you will. And you could position yourself as, I am a person that is introverted and I am very fact-driven. And there might be someone else that's out there that's extroverted and very creative, not very fact-driven. And so if we're on a team and we have to collaborate on a single objective, we might conflict. Now we conflict because we look at the world differently, but the way that the conflict manifests itself might be in the form of disagreements or maybe arguments or maybe passive aggressiveness. The first step is to recognize that the not getting along or the contention might not have to do anything with the presentation or the deliverable. It might have to be with the fact that the way you look at life and the way that your personalities are very different. So what I do is I try to put myself in that other person's position. I try to not be so stubborn in my own way of thinking and my own way of doing that I try to be flexible and agile in my own style to accommodate communicating and collaborating with this other individual who might see the world differently and think differently. Now, in some cases, there may be someone who is stubborn just for the sake of being stubborn. It's my way because I'm the smartest one in the room, and you guys should all do what I tell you to do because I'm the smartest person. Well, obviously, that person is not going to be easy to collaborate with. And if you contend with that person directly, it's going to escalate. And it's going to escalate to the point where the team will, the team will no longer be able to work towards the objective because the team dynamic itself just becomes not a team dynamic. So in that case, I would set up boundaries on what the roles and responsibilities of each person on the team are. So if this person says it's my way, I know the best, maybe you can give that person a leadership role. But people that actually create the content, who are the subject matter experts, they have their own responsibilities that they're responsible for. And they can speak to the technical accuracy or the presentation quality, et cetera, so that the person understands that the quality of the overall deliverable is best suited by these different roles that can contribute to the program in the best way. And then lastly, if this person is so stubborn that they want to do it all, they're going to bite off more than they can chew. Your professors, your teachers give you group projects that are very, very difficult and complex and a lot of work, just so that one person can't do it because they're forcing you to collaborate. So if one person tries to do it all, they're going to get burned out or they're going to get super frustrated. But at some point, they're going to, in order for the team to succeed, they're going to have to be collaborating because it's a forcing function. So that's not a very good answer to your question. There is another lessons in leadership that I do have on different personality types. And I'll share that with Nada, and Nada can share that with you. It's a short presentation. So Nada, if you just remind me to share it with Kay, I'll be happy to do that.
No problem, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kay. That's a great question. Any other questions?
So there's a question in the chat. How would you communicate with people from different cultures? Do you have any recommendations for international students to communicate effectively with natives?
Yes, that's a great question. That's another great question. So I'll apologize. English is a difficult language. There's a lot of idioms or idiomatics that have a lot of subtlety, and I know that they're difficult to pick up. We also use a lot of sarcasm. I know that there are other countries that use sarcasm as well, but in America, there are also regional variances of our language that make the sarcasm twice as difficult to navigate. My recommendations, and the other thing is we speak fast. So when you talk to people that speak fast, there's certain languages that lend themselves to fast speaking. It has to do with the way the consonants and the vowels are make up words. So I don't think that it's an issue if you ask someone to slow down. In fact, my children speak very fast, and I'm old, and I have to ask them to slow down a lot. So asking someone to slow down might help. Repeating back, and I know there's also a stigma of you don't want to appear ignorant or naive by having to repeat back. But initially, you have to make sure that you understand the context and the clarification, and then you will get faster and more proficient at communicating in English. It's worse if you think if you don't know what you don't know. If you think you know what they meant and you go down a path and you misinterpreted what they said, then that's even going to be more embarrassing than if you ask the question to get the full clarification. I know it's difficult to do, but as you can tell in my presentation, right, I'm not afraid of being embarrassed. I'm not afraid of being a pizza delivery driver at 40 because I have my long-term goal, my North Star. So if your North Star is to be able to speak more effective English, then there are some really tough mud puddles that you have to walk through as you become more proficient. And then at some point, you're going to be very proficient because you went through some painful learnings early on. So those would be the two quick tips that I would recommend. And again, if you send me this list, I'll think a little bit more about what I've done. So I used to travel to India and to Singapore, around the world, to open up offices. And I myself would try to speak slower. In fact, I think you've noticed I'm kind of a slow speaker. And it's kind of funny because I think all of you are aware, if you speak slow, people interject, people interrupt you all the time. And so I'm constantly raising my hand and asking people to give me the time to finish my thought. But if I speak in that manner, I only have to say it one time because people can understand it. So that was one of the things I learned as I traveled, is I intentionally slowed down my speech and enunciated every vowel and every consonant, so that when I talk to people in India or in Singapore or Ireland or Poland or wherever, that they could understand what I was saying. So I hope I answered the question, and Dot, if you send me the question, I'll think about it a little bit more.
Yes, no problem. I'll send you the question. There's also another question in the chat by Quinn. So Quinn asks, in response to your example of working with a stubborn client and how you shifted your services and presentations towards their needs, for example, blue compliments, precisions, etc., how do you find the balance between catering to their needs while still asserting yourself and your ideas within a project?
Wow, another great question. So as you first enter the workforce, you'll have to prove yourself by hard work and by thought leadership. Now, thought leadership is not necessarily asserting your will. It's being aware of having situational awareness globally and having situational awareness locally. Like in the semiconductor industry, I was aware of the market changes of what the future of USB was. Being aware of that, then you understand what you're doing tactically to build a USB device allows you to fit the pieces together. So there's an example of being aware, situational awareness at the high level, what you're doing tactically to move your product along. Now, once you do good work, you will establish credibility. It's at that point where you start to begin, where you establish credibility, is when you can start to assert yourself. Because when you start to assert yourself and you have credibility, then you're already recognized as being a thought leader. The quality of your work is high quality, and you are diligent. You work hard and you work wisely. For you to come in right at the back and try to assert your ideas because you're fresh out of school, it's going to be tough because you don't have that work experience credibility yet. So once you have established that credibility, then you can assert yourself. When you start to assert yourself, you need to understand the lane that you're in. So the client may be saying, I have an idea for a product, and the client understands the market conditions for that product, the budget, the timeline, the engineering aspect, and you understand one part of it, let's say the marketing piece. So when you assert yourself within your domain of knowledge. Don't try to assert yourself beyond your domain of knowledge, like let's say into engineering or into finance, if you don't have the visibility, because you don't have all the context that your client has around all the different parameters that comprise that situation or that context for that product. But if you know marketing, then it's fine to say, you know what, I am a digital marketing specialist, and I know that you don't use just LinkedIn, and you don't use just Facebook, and you don't just tweet, but you have to have a circular strategy of leveraging all 3 social media platforms. And this is what my thought is. I have a campaign. And if that's your expertise, then asserting yourself within your domain of knowledge is perfectly fine. But you have to have that credibility. You have to be recognized as a thought leader, and diligence and intelligence, et cetera, as I mentioned. So I hope that answered your question. You're welcome, Quinn.
Is there any other question?
I have a question. So I'm curious how you would handle a scenario. Say you share an idea, you present something, and then someone later on your team, whether it's like your manager, your client, or a teammate, shares the same idea. How would you handle that so you're not creating conflict, but that you can collaborate, both collectively having the same idea, even if you had it first?
That's another great question. So I'm going to put on my practical hat now. And they don't teach you this one in business school. You're all entrepreneurs, and the business environment is very competitive. And great ideas make money. And people will either take those ideas and create them, or people will come up with their own, or they'll take other people's ideas. Having a great idea and taking a great idea is only one part of monetizing it. Taking it to market and getting a return on investment and making money for your company, that's the rest of the story. So so when I went up the chain of command in the restaurant business, you have to be aware of the people that are competing for the job, and you have to paint yourself in a good light, a positive light, high perceived value. And in some cases, you have to paint your competitors in a poor light. I mean, this is marketing 101. Thought leadership, coming up with great ideas and then monetizing them, is probably one of the most important aspects to have if you want to grow in a company, go up in a chain. So there was a situation where I built out a paradigm for an organization, how to shape an organization of a large organization, let's say 100 plus employees, into a functioning organization to drive managed services. It was a very complex paradigm that had to do with effective recruiting, training, retention. It had what's in it for me value propositions for all the stakeholders. It had measurements to measure execution along every process step. And one of my peers tried to take that idea and he wanted to, he didn't attribute any of the content to me or any of the thought to me. He put his name on it. He presented it to his leadership, which was on a different leadership chain than mine. But he started to falter when someone asked him questions about how he tied the process steps up to the strategy, up to the mission and vision. And because he couldn't answer that, the other executives went across the ocean and asked the other organization how they would do this. And because it was my idea, I wrote out the whole rationale of supporting the organization through those process steps, up through the tactics to the strategy. And then at that point, people recognize who the person was that developed it. I didn't put them under the bus. I didn't say, you stole my idea, you dirty rat. I said, I went and I answered the questions that the highest levels of leadership had about how to really implement it, how to monetize it. So that's it in a nutshell. That guy eventually lost his job because he got recognized that he was not a thought leader. And that's the way it is in business. That's why I mentioned thought leadership so much through this presentation. So that was a good question. I hope I answered it.
Okay, so we are a little bit over time. I'm not sure if there's any other question. Is there any other question?
I just have one last question. My question is for everybody here who were very excited from your presentation today and would like to learn more, maybe connect with you. How can they reach out to you?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn. Please reach out to me, LinkedIn. If you're interested, they're kind of techy, but I do write a blog on moving products and services to the cloud. And then I will, you're more than welcome to email me. It's here, I'll type it in here. K Kumasaka. Yeah. Please feel free to email me or reach out to me in LinkedIn, and then I'll try to dig up that other information. If not well, I may be writing up some other presentations and putting on video. So if I do, I'll post them to LinkedIn and you can, you'll have the opportunity to watch them there. So this was really my pleasure. Thank you so much. And I wish the best of luck to all of you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kyle. This was a great presentation. I'm sure everybody here got so much value from you. Thank you for answering our questions. And for anybody that wants to reach out to Kyle, feel free to reach out by email or by LinkedIn. And maybe we will invite him again next quarter. Who knows? Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
One last word for members, please. It's going to be really quick. I just want to say that, again, if you would like us to email you the presentation for extra credit, just let us know. We'll do that as soon as we get the recording. And I just also want to say just big thanks to Kyle and big thanks to everybody who are here that joined our meeting today to learn more and connect with each other. And I just want to say that we will be thrilled to have you on our other meetings, to see you all in our other meetings. We have them every Friday at 3 p.m. Plus, we have officer positions open right now too. So if you would like to learn more about them, also let us know. And just a quick thing, if you believe that we helped you in any way or Kyle has provided you some value, just please for us, can you share it with your peers and just tell people more about us so we could have more people coming up to our events, because we're really here to help you understand yourself and to understand your passion and to work on to build something new and change the world in your own way. So please let us know if you need anything from us. We'll be here, glad to help you, and feel free to share it with your friends.
Thank you, everyone. I also wanted to share that next Friday, our speaker will be Kyle Barber. So another Kyle again. So Kyle Barber is the chair of the marketing department at Bellevue College. So he's going to be talking about his career in digital marketing and marketing, as well as a club at Bellevue College that it's really good for your future in business, DECA. So feel free to join us next Friday as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.